Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Well, our first conversation for today is on the austerity, federal government's austerity measure. And this time around, we're going to be taking it from the angle of development. And of course, I have here in the studio with me a developmental economist. He is Mr. Odilim Ewebara. Good morning, Mr. Ewebara. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me after a long, long time.
That's correct. And welcome. I hope you had a safe flight.
It was a smooth flight.
Now, I'm sure you listened to the Minister of Finance reel out some of the measures, they intend to take, to curb whatever effect this dwindling oil price may probably have on the Nigerian economy. What's your take on that?
I'm not only listening to her, I happened to be there when she was giving the press conference. And after I listened to her prescriptions, I had to leave because I had other engagements. I think the fact is, whether we like it or not, since 2010 to date, Nigeria had been running fiscal austerity. So it's no longer news. So when she said that she wants to run fiscal austerity, I'm wondering what is new about it. Actually, what we have been doing is the fiscal austerity we are running is on the side of capital expenditure, whereas on the side of recurrent, it continues to grow. So I am concerned because when you have a situation like this, what you have to do is to stimulate the economy. You do not consolidate the economy. We know that in 2008, when there was financial crisis, the United States government flooded the system, illiquid system with liquidity. And of course, invested massively. $787 billion was rolled out to invest in infrastructure expansion and modernization in the United States. Then the Fed chairman, through using quantitative easing, was able to pump into the system, into the liquid system, $4 trillion until the end of, until the middle of last year.
No, but considering the fact that, we're in the election year,
yes,
preparing for election,
yes,
you talk about stimulating the economy, pouring more money into the economy. Don't you think that's probably might be detrimental too, considering that people are going in for election and, of course, the inflation rate?
Thank you that you mentioned the issue of inflation, because it is an area that I want Nigerians to understand. What we have been doing is we are import-dependent nation. So each time we fight inflation, we are fighting inflation not to our own economy, but to those who are exporting to Nigeria. Because what are you doing? Each time you defend the Naira, you give Naira more value, and importers and dumpers will take advantage of that. So actually inflation in Nigeria is a reaction to the exchange rate. And when we fight inflation, it means that we are allowing Chinese-made goods cheaper into the country because we are subsidizing imports. So when people say we have to fight inflation on what? And how can interest rate be high and they're fighting inflation? I think the whole thing is lopsided. What I think that needs to be done is to revisit Nigerian economy and restructure Nigerian economy to be a modern economy that is internal revenue generating economy, just like any other economy. But if we continue to depend on oil, we must continue to find ourselves here. I have said it, and I continue to say it, that defending the Naira is defending the indefensible. Look, whether we like it or not, if Mefele wants to do this country favor, what he will do is, but he can't do it. I think the National Assembly will intervene to do that, because we must devalue the Naira immediately. If not, what he is doing is that he is supporting the Naira, and foreign portfolio investors are gradually exiting. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they're taking advantage of this, and the banks are also exiting. So who pays the bill? Nigerian people. Why can't we devalue the Naira? If we devalue the Naira now, the cost of production, cost of imports will be very high. So we discourage imports and encourage locally made goods to be viable. And of course, we have to put high tariffs on imported goods.
Now, having weighed perhaps the implication of devaluing the Naira and perhaps what the CBN is trying to do now, you think the best option should just be to devalue the Naira?
No, I have suggested that, Nigeria is owing about 85% of his debt to local lenders, which is over 9 trillion naira. Why can't we print exactly 9 trillion naira to pay the debt? Because the finance minister invited me to talk. So can you allow me to talk?
Go ahead.
Now, if we can now print exactly the amount and pay it to the owners, because why do you borrow domestically? It's because when there's a problem, you pay with your currency. You don't pay with foreign currency. Is it not true? Now, why shouldn't we? So many countries have done it. Even Germany during the World War II. Even the United States in 1865, after the Civil War, has to pay dollars instead of gold. So why should we? Because why we shouldn't? Because the banks are the beneficiaries of this, and every pressure will be on that. If we pay, do you know how much Nigeria has spent within 4 years of servicing debt? It is 2.8 trillion. This year alone is 712 billion to service debt. It's not to pay the debt. So why should we put ourselves in this situation?
No, but have you also considered the costs of printing this naira
What cost?
that you're talking about?
Okay, yeah, looking at the cost of printing naira. So let's not print naira. That's what you're trying to say. Naira actually is the value you put on a naira sheet of paper that it has. If you want to print 1,000 naira sheets, if you want to print 100 naira, that is dependent on you. Do you understand? And when I say print, it doesn't necessarily need to be printing notes, because we're now running e-payment. Do you understand? We're running e-payment. So it's not necessary that we're going to print 9 trillion naira notes. But we have to do these things in order to put less pressure on the economy. Right now, you know that before the end of this year, CBN must have used 10 to 15 billion as to protect the value of the naira. And you are saying, why are you doing this? Because you want to reduce inflation. That's what they are saying. But inflation of what? Because Nigeria is 80 to 90% dependent on imported goods. So we are trying to give foreigners more value for their goods in Nigeria. That's what we are doing.
Right, well,
it's a complex economy. So many people will not understand what I'm talking about here. But this is the reality. This is the reality.
Okay, let's look at another issue the finance minister talked about, the fact that $2 billion is to be withdrawn from the excess crude accounts. That's between now and the end of this year. That's to take care of critical expenditure.
You know, Shimezie, it baffles me and it makes me angry. You know that I hate anybody in this world, but why should we run our economy in this way? Shimezie, when the Minister of Finance, who I respect a lot, came into this country in 2011, what she would have done is to start the process of diversification of the economy. Start the process. The process should not be when there's a problem intervene. We would have looked at power sector, because the cost of doing business in Nigeria is so high. Look at Dangote Cement, Dangote. They are whipping. Dangote and all these big multinationals are whipping because the cost of generating electricity is so high on them. And then you look at interest rate. Nigeria has the highest interest rate in the world at 25% and at 12% key interest. So how do you expect? And of course, foreigners flood this country with this economy with the foreign cheaply made goods. So I don't understand. The woman would have set the pace. Meet the Mr. President. Mr. President, here are the critical steps we have to take. We must come with a comprehensive roadmap on infrastructure development so that we tackle power sector.
Well, but that is being done. We've seen what has been done in the power sector. I think it's a process.
Privatization is giving moving the problem from the public to the private. But the private is illiquid. That's why they have to give the 213 billion intervention. If I come to you to buy something, Chimezie, and after 6 months I come to you for you to lend me money to run that thing, is it not contradictory? But this is Nigeria for you. So what I'm trying to say, I've said it that Nigeria can lose minimum of 100,000 megawatts. We can get it within 5 years. The problem that are no innovative ways of approaching our problem. People come when there's a problem, they discuss it, everyone goes away. If we say, look, we need 100,000 megawatts, let's find a way to get the financing. And you ask Nigerians from around the world, we give you the solution. One of the solutions I'll be proposing, and nobody listens, is that we have not less than 45,000 45 billion barrels of oil reserve. We can use, because you use whatever you have as collateral or as security. We could have taken 5 billion barrels of that and use as strategic collateral and ask countries like China and India to raise about $300 billion and use that oil as strategic collateral. It's not that they're going to take that. If we get 300,000 if we get $300 billion in escrow account somewhere, and we now map out areas of power generation and ask any country, anybody who can give us this within 3 years, come. And as people generate this in wind, solar, gas, and all these things, we map them across the nation. And as they build, we pay them through escrow account. But this has not been taking place. Do we really want to develop this country? Or do we want to continue just consuming what others make while it lasts?
All right. Talking about diversifying the economy, because I think it's inevitable now.
Exactly.
And I believe that the federal government have seen that the oil price may not necessarily go up in anytime soon.
Yes.
So, I mean, they need to take some proactive actions to really see what we can do to diversify the economy. So what lessons do you think, you mentioned China and India, are there lessons Nigeria needs to learn?
Fantastic. It's good to ask this question. Remember that in 1979, November 1978, not 1979, November 1978, Deng came in and they saw a disjointed economy. And what he did was to quickly address infrastructure deficit. And then make sure that the imports, no more imports. If you want to sell to Chinese, relocate your factory there and you give all the incentives to produce locally. And you can even export and tax-free. That's what we're supposed to do. India did it. Every country has been doing it. So what we need to do is to address imports. Give our real sector firms the incentives to make these goods locally. But it's not enough to give them incentive. We must block floods of foreign-made goods. Because if not, they displace all the efforts. Because no country has ever developed by depending on foreign-made goods. So we must quickly do that. But you cannot do that without investing massively in infrastructure. But now, look at our budget. Our budget last year was about $29 billion. Then we say budget to GDP is about 5%. South African budget this year was $95 billion, which is about 25.4%. Now, why can't we increase our budget to GDP to at least 20%? If we do that, we'll now be budgeting about 16 trillion naira or $100 billion. When we do that, we reduce the cost of running government to be so insignificant. But you ask me, how do we get the money? You borrow the money. You see, no country, Dangote is one of the most indebted in the world. But Dangote borrows to invest wisely. Why Nigerians oppose government borrowing? Because we borrow to sustain big government. If we now put in place borrowing strategies, so many borrowing strategies, Nigeria can meet this. But the problem also is that if you look at the Fiscal Responsibility Act, Section 12, subsection 1, it depends fiscal deficit at 3%. Other countries' fiscal deficits are up to 10%, 12%, 15%, and these countries that have addressed infrastructure deficits. Right.
Okay. Now you talked about us borrowing and investing wisely.
Yes.
Oh, well, I believe that is why they have decided to cut some of these unnecessary expenditure. Perhaps that is one way. But however, let's take one of those tweets from Owe Akin. Is asking, what actually can be the benefits of these austerity measures? Will it have effect on falling prices of petroleum products?
Fantastic, fantastic. Look, you see, we would have addressed that problem. If I were to be, but I don't, no, let me not use that word. You know, a minister of finance is, his or her first job is revenue generation. You would have closed all the leakages in the economy. Do you know that Nigeria is spending almost 50% of its imports on petroleum products and agriculture? If you remove these two, there will be less pressure on the naira. Why should we wait for people like those people who are going to have their refineries in 2018? Why should we wait? If people like that can borrow up to 3 billion to address to build refineries, that is not a sovereign nation. A sovereign nation like Nigeria can borrow any amount to fix its refinery, turnaround of the refinery. But why this is not happening? It's because there are those who are benefiting from this, those who don't want this country to function, and we cannot hand this economy to private sector. No economy, including that of the United States. have been handed to private sector. So what we are doing is that we're handing everything to private sector, and then Nigerians will just become spectators. So we must do something. Government must be responsible and responsive to the economy.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Odilim. Well, your words are quite catchy there. The economy has to be stimulated.
Yes.
Now, the central bank, of course, I think sometime next week will be having their monetary policy meeting. Are you expecting a drop?
No, because let me tell you, I have already said it. I gave Mr. Emefiele that benefit of the doubt, but I discovered that it was a wrong benefit of the doubt. Emefiele doesn't have the power to bring interest rate to a single digit. She cannot do it because there are interests in the banks who actually benefit from high interest rate. Remember that the government borrows extensively from the banks. For the bank, interest rate must be high so that they benefit from it, and naira value must be high so that they continue benefit from it. So what will happen is that when the National Assembly convenes, they must call MFLA to order and say you must bring interest rate down, and you must make sure that there's a lot of liquidity in the system.
All right, thank you very much, Odilim Ewebera. Well, I've been speaking to Mr. Odilim Ewebera, a developmental economist, and he has talked about stimulating the economy, borrowing more and investing wisely, and of course that government needs to increase its budget. That's been quite an interesting conversation there. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, well, we'll be looking at the merger between Nigerian breweries and consolidated breweries.